Let's take a live look at the White House right now, where President Trump will wrap up the 2020 Republican National Convention. He will officially accept his party's nomination for a second term. Some of the other speakers taking the stage tonight: Ben Carson, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Rudy Giuliani, and the president's daughter Ivanka Trump. Democratic vice presidential nominee, meanwhile, Kamala Harris, gave her own speech earlier today. She addressed the shooting of Jacob Blake by police in Wisconsin and noted that Republicans have yet to bring it up.
Justice. Let's talk about that. Because the reality is that the life of a black person in America has never been treated as fully human. And we have yet to fulfill that promise of equal justice under law.
Harris also criticized the president's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and laid out ways in which she says the president failed the American people.
He failed to protect the American people. Plain and simple. Trump showed that we in the legal profession would call a reckless disregard for the well-being of the American people.
And we will see if the president responds when he takes the stage tonight. One thing we can expect is for the president to go after Joe Biden, but just how aggressive will he get? I sat down with CBS News political correspondent Major Garrett.
I've been told by sources in the Trump campaign he is going to be incredibly tough, very aggressive. Rip-roaring was one way I heard it described. A very strong case against Joe Biden, and also, for the first time, an articulation from the president in his own words what his second-term agenda would be. That has been a conspicuous gap in a Trump re-election campaign, noticeable because most incumbents by this time have already tried to tell the country what they would do with another 4 years. President Trump really hasn't. That will be a component part of the speech tonight.
Well, and now typically the opposing party stays out of the spotlight the week of the other party's convention, but we had Kamala Harris taking on Trump today. Biden's also been speaking. Are they feeling they must stay visible during the GOP convention?
Yes, and the other thing about the Trump factor in American politics is all those conventions have been turned on their head. So, yes, historically, whatever party is not having the convention stays out of the way of the party that is. But Donald Trump was attempted to be ubiquitous last week during the Democratic convention, counter-programming in his own way. Democrats said, you know, we gave him a couple of days, but we can't let him have 4 days. So they're back into the fray now. And not incidentally, former Vice President Biden put out a statement yesterday saying the violence in Kenosha has to stop, and he is opposed to it. That was a signal that he needed to say something in this moment, not about the protest, but about the violence surrounding them. The Trump campaign interpreted that as the Biden campaign becoming aware that all of this rhetoric from the Republicans about law and order and lawlessness was beginning to have some positive effect for their poll numbers, and Joe Biden had to respond in kind. That he did tells them this is going to be an ongoing conversation from now until Election Day.
And we'll have full coverage of the RNC tonight starting at 7. That's followed by expert analysis in a special KPIX 5 newscast after CBS prime time.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she thinks Joe Biden should not debate President Donald Trump.
I do not think that the President of the United States has comported himself in a way that anybody should, and that has any association with truth. I wouldn't legitimize a conversation with him, nor a debate in terms of the presidency of the United States.
Meanwhile, Biden and his campaign have made it clear that he still intends to debate the president.